We have a new guest joining us in the show. For this hour, we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Ekuru Aukot, the party leader of the Third Way Alliance, with regards to the proposed calls for a conversation, a national dialogue. Dr. good morning.
Good morning. First of all, Eric, I think you should not mislead your listeners. It's not national dialogue. They are calling it bipartisan. And we will need to deconstruct what bipartisan means.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. It's bipartisan conversation. You're here because you have previously said that when you hear what they're talking about, you get a sense that this is BBI being introduced through the back door. Mm-hmm. You'll tell us about that. Mm-hmm. You'll tell us about but let's first hear the proverb from Mali.
Mm-hmm. And I brought him more proverbs today.
He did.
An entire book of proverbs.
The good doctor is a man of his word.
Yeah.
We discussed this book the last time he was here, and he said he would bring it. And lo and behold,
the book is here.
The book is here.
What book is it?
This book, Waiting for the Wild Beasts to Vote.
Waiting for the Wild Beasts to Vote.
Yes.
By Amadou Kroma.
Yes. So,
Safi.
You know how long you'll wait for that to happen, don't
you? Okay. The proverbs are from Mali.
They are from Mali. Truth is available only to those who have the courage to question what they have been taught.
Truth is available only to those who have the courage to question
what they have been taught.
Yes.
What's your direct interpretation of this?
For me, I think even if we were to contextualize it in the context of our politics, and this is what we're going to try and delve into this morning, there were a lot of election promises that we were told in the 2022 general election. But I think many people believed it to be the truth, but now it's manifesting daily, in my view, as a lie. For example, we were told that we inherited empty coffers, but we can see the largesse, the kind of expenditure that this government is putting Kenyans through, the various appointments, the various constitutional, the disrespect for the violation of the constitution. So only when you question such actions, then that's when they become truthful. I'm just putting into context of
that's
Kenya.
When you see the truth.
That's when you see the truth. That's when the truth comes out. To the extent that when we actually... So the truth here was that we were being lied to.
Despite the truth was that we were being lied to.
Yes, the truth is that we were being lied to, despite the recipe. Because eventually, a deputy president, commonly known as Rigiji, said, you know what, we don't have money. If you want to flock us, our buttocks are ready for flocking. So that was the truth. The truth is that actually we were lied to at electioneering time.
And then there was...
And therefore, the courage we now must have as Kenyans is to question that which we were told as the truth.
Okay. So a couple of weeks ago, on a Sunday, President William Ruto addressed the nation.
Right.
And this is following the call for nationwide protests by Azimio. And he said, there comes a time when it's important not just to keep talking, but to actually just pause and listen. And I'm listening to what is being said, and I think it's important that we all sit somewhere and have a conversation together. And he called then for bipartisan talks being held in Parliament between the Kenya Kwanza side and the Azimio side, so that they can thrash out these matters that are being raised by Azimio. And he particularly went into this matter of the IEBC selection panel. We can work out a way in which we can legally have a conversation that can be resolved.
Yeah.
And he says the other issues of the cost of living and all, there are interventions that my administration has put in place, and we can discuss that. Now, since then, we've seen Raila Odinga respond and say, yes, okay, to the calls. We have called off the demonstrations. We are going to have participate in this, although the Azimio side has its own opinion of how the talks are going to take place. Parliament plus experts. Kenya Kwanza says Parliament plus 0. Other Kenyans are coming out to say, but where are we? Where do we fit into this conversation? And then herein comes Dr. Ekuru Aukot, and he says, "Hi, in the BBI." Where do you get that from?
Yes, because, Eric, I'm not a guest in this nation and in this country, for sure. I've been around, and I've also interacted largely with some of this political class and leadership. BBI is already being implemented. There are many signs to how BBI is being implemented. If you look at the deliberate and utter violation of the Kenya Constitution, the Kenya Constitution at Article 130 speaks of the national executive that comprises the president, his deputy, and the cabinet secretaries. And it caps the cabinet at a maximum of 22. Now, the president has actually expanded the executive against the provisions of the Constitution. I think we have, 24, 27 cabinet secretaries appointed. That is already a violation.
How so? Explain.
I mean, I'm talking about the cabinet secretaries who were appointed. And then we have got 43 permanent secretaries.
You're talking about the cabinet secretaries plus the cabinet level appointments.
Yes.
In terms of advisors.
Yes.
And the secretary to the
No,
cabinet.
advisors, I don't count them as part of the cabinet. I'm talking about cabinet secretaries. Okay. Then principal secretaries are 43. The Constitution caps the cabinet at 22. So you must match a cabinet secretary with a principal secretary.
Okay.
Now, over and above that, the president has gone ahead against a court order to appoint 53 chief administrative secretaries. These are animals that don't exist in our constitutional order. He has also created an office called the Chief Cabinet Prime Secretary. Again, another strange dragon that's not in our constitution. So what the president has done, he has actually violated the provisions of Chapter 8, the executive, but also circumvented how you amend the constitution to expand the national executive. That is, you needed to invoke provisions of Article 255, 256, which is parliamentary initiative, and 257, popular initiative. Okay? And you remember, I mean, now let's tie it with BBI. The principle in BBI was that we need to accommodate regional representation. We need to bring Kenyans together. Now, bringing Kenya together in the lingua of this political class in Kenya is picking pointmen from regions and therefore bringing them into government. And that is what they call simplistically inclusion. That's not inclusion. It's about, because if you look at, for example, the chief administrative secretaries that he has appointed, all of them are failed politicians. All. Not a single technocrat. In fact, point out to me any single technocrat in that list of 53. There's none. So the president has also gone against the will and the letter, the spirit of the constitution letter of the law.
What is a failed politician? You know, there are people who participated in an election and they did not win the election.
Yes.
There are many others in that list of CASs who did not vie for elective seats.
Yeah, but larger because
how would you call them failed politicians?
They were his political supporters. And the truth for the matter is, unless you now want to feign blindness, you must be able to see that these are people who are supporting the president full time. Yeah, and you see, and for
me,
one of the things that,
but that's not a failed politician.
Well, fair enough. I mean, okay. I haven't really even bothered to thrash out but I know largely there are many of them ex-governors, whatever, this and that. They tried to be in Senate, they tried to go to Parliament, they failed. So anyway, be that as it may, it is still very unconstitutional that he now expands the national executive. And the reason I'm going back to CT's, proverb from Mali, in 2022, we are promised many things. We will not borrow. We will run a lean government. We'll do this and that. But we don't hear that anymore. We don't also hear that, there's a mama mboga or a hustler or a boda boda who has been appointed into cabinet or into government. Because there are many of them who with the degrees. So that if someone like President William Ruto, with all the intelligence machinery, he could actually investigate and find out if there's actually a Uber guy who drives even with 2 degrees. That's a hustler. And that's a man with qualification or a woman with qualification. I will easily appoint to the cabinet. Then I will live to the true promise I gave them that this will be a hustler government. A hustler government cannot go on burning money you do not have. You do not say, I'm gonna spend 800 million Kenyan shillings in buying cars. I mean, as if you didn't have a car in the first place, or as if government did not have cars. How is that a hustler nation? So I think City's proverb sits very well with our political context. And yes, I smell BBI because this idea of bipartisan dialogue inside parliament is already a red herring for me. Why do I say that? Because the issues we are talking about, cost of living, cannot be resolved on a round table or in a boardroom. This requires some serious economic, fiscal policies to be in place. It requires us to fix issues to do with the Financial Act. And if I were to take you back to the idea of a lie, in 2019, the people who are now drumming up support for a reduction of the cost of living were actually in parliament when, for example, VAT on petroleum was actually increased. And that is what drove the cost of living high. So today, Azimio cannot come out clean and say, we were not responsible. Remember, it was during the handshake government that the cost of living actually went up. And I recall Raila Odinga himself, just several months before the election, defending the government, viciously defending the government. I remember him using the words, wacheni kubweka bweka kama mbwa. Cost of living is not only unique to Kenya. Now that he did not form the government, now he's turning around to say the cost of living, this government is responsible. No, they are all responsible for the situation Kenya is in right now. And furthermore, I don't see any good that will come out of these bipartisan talks inside parliament. Most of MPs I've spoken to will tell you that there's nothing good that can come out of parliament. Parliament has already been compromised. Ruto is busy buying opposition MPs. That's why you see the Jalangos, the Professor Ojendas and others, being even scared of going back to their hoods.
What is buying?
Well, this is the language they use themselves. They have told me that parliament has been bought. It's been compromised. Last week I was in a show similar to yours with a member of parliament whose name let me not mention. He said, I couldn't forget about anything that came out of parliament. And I say this because, there are three cardinal duties of a member of parliament. To represent the constituencies that actually sent you to parliament. To pass legislation and to oversight government. Yes, if the cost of living is high, Eric City, why have we not seen a single motion being tabled in parliament to address this cost of living? Why have we not seen a statement being issued by, say, the leader of majority or leader of minority on the floor of State House, and let's debate that statement? We don't see that. Instead, parliament wants to meet on this bipartisan. In fact, we should make this, if there is need for this, which personally I'm reluctant to admit there is actually no need of this bipartisan dialogue. If really there has to be, then let's bring it outside parliament. Let's bring it to the people. Let it be multi-partisan. Let's bring all the political parties, because we all participated in the last general election, either as candidates or as people who participated in that voting. So this nonsense of Azimio and by the way, I don't even understand. Last time when I was here, we discussed whether somebody can actually belong to two political parties at the same time. So now we have reduced Kenya into being Azimio and KK. We have reduced Kenya into being Raila and Ruto. So where do the rest of us fit in? And really, if you want to talk about the problems that have really affected this country for the longest time, there is an avalanche of inquiries and findings about what ails Kenya. If it is matters electoral justice or injustice, whichever way you want to look at it, we have the Kriegler report. There is even Waki report on post-election violence that again links to matters election, how we manage our elections. We have got the Akumi report. We have the Ndungu report on matters land, and many, many others. I could go on and on. We have got the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission report, which today are gathering dust. So if KK administration was anything to go by, and if they are really truthful, then let them retable those reports, and because they have identified the problem in our country. I know one thing they will never put on the table is the conduct and character of the leadership we have in this country, because it's a direct betrayal of Chapter 6 of our Constitution.
I want to ask a question. You've said you don't see the need for this dialogue, the bipartisan dialogue, and you say, if there's any need, then let it be outside parliament. When you say you don't see the need, are you saying that you don't see the reason why the dialogue was called for.
Okay, first of all, so let's deconstruct
Because the reason
yeah.
the dialogue was called as a result of the agitation by the Azimio side, and the president said, okay, so let me hear you. Let's have a conversation. So are you saying that even the call for demonstration was unjustified?
No. First of all, personally, as a constitutional lawyer, I respect constitutional rights and liberties any time of the day, any minute of the day. Article 37 of the Kenya Constitution guarantees the right to, to picket, to demonstrate, whatever. But it also says peaceably. You must be peaceful when you go on this demonstration and picketing. Now, of course, the character of ODM or Azimio side demonstration has always been violence. And you've seen that. Disruption of the economy, disruption of the very, very economy they want improved. By the time when you instill fear on Mama Mboga or a boda who is not able to use certain routes, you've already sent that man home hungry and his children sleep hungry. So when I look at the agenda by the Azimio side, there's a sweetener. The first one, I think, is A, cost of living, cost of fuel, and all that.
And
but the 99% of it is about election. Okay, now, the issue of election was closed. Even for you today to say, let's open a server, let's open a ballot box, you'll need a court order. Azimio has not moved the court, and they ought to know this. I see a lot of ignorance in Azimio side. For example, the Court of Appeal decision in the minor Kiai case concluded that what is final result is that vote that is cast at the polling station.
Yeah.
And that is Form 34A, which were fed into the server. Okay? I'm not an IT person, but I did just a quick search. What is this server? A server is basically a computer. It's a storage facility. As simple as that. And when you are given a link to that storage facility, to that computer, you've already accessed the server. So this issue of saying, let's open the server, I don't understand what it is. They're not even explaining. Now, that agenda is more about election. I see a lot of bitterness that we did not win. And I think when I speak to some of the Azimio people, they really, they are embarrassed. They don't understand, how could we have lost this election when we had Uhuru Kenyatta on our side, the government, the outgoing president, we had all the resources. I think they're really wondering. And of course, now it's coming out clear that they did not even have agents. Yeah? And I think they did not even look after their own vote. So the reason I say I smell BBI, because that is a dead issue. The issue on election is a dead issue. I do not see in that agenda relating to election as punishing any IEBC officials who may have committed electoral malpractice. If I saw that, then I will take them very, very seriously. Because if there are irregularities, and remember, it is the same, both sides say that we will go to this election. If we lose, we'll accept. But those who lost, as the Azimio side, moved the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, which is the only place where we can actually determine matters presidential election. And the Supreme Court returned a verdict. And you recall, the judges even asked very tough questions. Please explain this to us. How did this ballot, how was it changed? And they were not able to. Surprise, surprise, thereafter, they come up with a whistleblower, blah, blah, blah. So having been in this country also in 2017, 2018, and having participated in that election, I see all the signs of how another BBI is being choreographed.
I don't understand. What were the tenets of the BBI? What was the focus? What would you say were the pillars that were supposed to support the BBI?
There are about 9 pillars, if you recall.
Okay. So when you say that you see it being resurrected, what exactly is being resurrected?
What is being resurrected are 2 things. An element of BBI, which is really an inclusion of the regional kingpins into government to be accommodated. But I also see an element of another version of the handshake. The handshake is, they have agreed they are not going to call it a handshake. They will call it bipartisan. And if you go back memory lane, City, let's go back memory lane so that Kenyans can see the pattern. 1997, you remember when the phrase was that the Jogo has swallowed the tractor. The cooperation and partnership between the then NDP and KANU, where Raila and his team were agitating outside that KANU is illegitimate, is not in government properly. Then Moi brought them in. And therein, the people's problems were forgotten. Fast forward, 2002, the National Rainbow Coalition government again brought again all these people together. There was an agitation, they came up together, then the NAC government was formed. Again, the talk was about constitution review, constitution making, amend the constitution. In 2005, we went to a referendum. Again, they split. That marriage of convenience collapsed. In 2007, 2008 came in the Nusumkati government. Now, the Nusumkati government, again, was about just addressing the issues. But one of the things that I thank the Nusumkati government for, there was the product of the current new constitution, the 2010 constitution. But after that, hell broke loose again. 2018, we saw the handshake government. Again, it started with the demonstrations, the false hearing in of Raila Odinga, and then eventually let's shake hands. We need to. Now again, we are seeing the bipartisan dialogue. Before the bipartisan dialogue, there was demonstration. You are an illegitimate government. We will storm State House. Blah blah blah. So, if I look at all these scenarios, except for the 202, one of the geniuses of both Moi, Uhuru Kenyatta, and now Ruto is to bring on board into government the only person out there, the biggest noisemaker who can actually mobilize the mob and the crowd, Raila Amolo Odinga. And the only way to quieten him is either to do this...
To accommodate him.
To accommodate him is to introduce this language of less dialogue. What are we dialoguing on? On the Kenya Kwanza government, CT, if you truly won the election, and you so believe so you won the election, the Supreme Court even said, yes, you won this election. Why then are you entertaining talks over what? I would like to see KK implement its plan. I want to see KK, reduce the cost of living like they promised. They said in 100 days. Now they moved to 6 months. Now they're saying, give us time. The coffers were empty. But we are also seeing the kind of expenditure that's happening on our very, very eyes. So this is just an attempt to accommodate their laziness in implementing or in capacity to implement that which they promised Kenyans. So they will bring in, because many other people inside there really have no capacity, in my view, to organize a demonstration. They don't have a sycophantic following like Raila has. And so the only way to appease Raila Amolo Odinga is to say, less dialogue. Now you can see the language has changed. We are no longer going to Maandamano. We are going to town halls.
Let me ask you this
Which
question.
is probably a more elegant way of doing things.
We'll have town halls and then we'll end up at Jacaranda grounds.
Yes.
This is not a town. Let's take a break.
But also before CT comes in. And the other thing that about this dialogue, it's less with a lot of threats. If you don't do this, we'll do that. Now, how do you dialogue with somebody who is threatening you? Plus, I really want to see the agenda. I don't see any agenda other than just election.
Let's take a break then. It's 29 minutes to 9. Dr. Ekuru Aukot is the party leader of the Third Way Alliance. He is here with us in the studio this morning, raising questions about these bipartisan talks that have been proposed and that are going to take place between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. He says, what I see here is just a return of BBI.